Welcome to APCUG's Wednesday workshop, where we get together in the middle of the week to learn more about technology. We're very excited to have a very unique presentation program. It really is more of a participation program than a presentation program. Lisa Flagmeyer was here a month or two ago, and we had an excellent time with her presentation on cybersecurity and stuff. And she came away so excited about this group of ours that she contacted and said her team would like to meet with us and get our insight and input on some ideas that they are trying to do to put together another presentation workshop such. So we're excited to have the team from the National Cybersecurity Alliance with us today. Lisa is the executive director, and because she's executive director, she has to do all that executive directoring stuff and dealing with Washington and all sorts of stuff. But we're excited to have Shavina Cowper, who's the operations manager, Jennifer Cook, who's going to be leading this, the senior director of marketing. Arturo Morales is here. He's the creative director. Barry Edel is the content director. Lucas King is also here, and I think Max will be with us. And so we're going to be excited about this. This is an open participation time. We want you to share your ideas and thoughts with Jennifer and her team. So at this time, I'm going to turn things over to Jennifer, and hopefully we'll do what Lisa is hoping takes place.
Awesome. Thanks so much. We really appreciate you having us at your meeting today. So as John mentioned, I'm the Senior Director of Marketing at the National Cybersecurity Alliance. So if you didn't attend Lisa's presentation a few months ago, I can just give you an overview of who we are and what we plan to do today. So we're a nonprofit organization. We've been around for over 20 years, and we create free, easily accessible educational materials and articles about cybersecurity and staying safe online for the general public. So our website, staysafeonline.org, has tons of free resources on how to, protect your data and finances, anything else online from bad actors. And throughout the year, we run different campaigns to teach people about cybersecurity. Our biggest campaign is Cybersecurity Awareness Month every October. We partner with the Department of Homeland Security on that campaign. We run other programs throughout the year. So one program that we're starting to build right now is a campaign for older adults. And we wanted to get together with this group and have an open conversation about any cybersecurity challenges you see. We have a list of questions prepared that I'd like to pose to the group and hear what everybody thinks. I also encourage other members of the NCA team to chime in with questions. And then towards the end of the call, we'd like to share some of the content that we've been working on to see, what you think and if you have any feedback or suggestions for us. So let me pull up just a few questions we have. And for these questions, feel free to, again, raise your hand or chime in the chat. There might be things on here that maybe you're, already aware of cybersecurity-wise or pretty comfortable with, but I encourage you to also think of if there's others in your life that maybe struggle a bit more with technology, to help us understand kind of where people are at in terms of their use of technology and understanding of different cybersecurity best practices and cyber hygiene. So starting with, I guess my first question to kick it off, what are the barriers you see to people having better cyber hygiene habits in general, like using strong passwords or enabling multi-factor authentication? Do you think is maybe preventing people from adopting some of these habits?
About it. You either roll with the punches or you get pulverized by the punches. So you have a lot of people who can't grasp too much tech talk. And you got to really simplify the stuff, use analogies a lot that they may comprehend to convey the idea. And how you get them to use a password manager, I don't know the trick to that. I've been using one for decades, but I mean, as far as that goes, I think it's a combination of bad habit and laziness. I guarantee you laziness is a factor because they want it as simple and easy, period. They don't want to even think about it other than what they are attempting to do online.
Gotcha. Mike?
Right. Yeah. I've found much the same as what Tim has. My particular concern is trying to get, I deal a lot with elderly people, and trying to get them to use a password manager, I find the most difficult thing. For example, I keep looking for simple videos that I could share with them on how to do it, but particularly using a password manager on a cell phone, I find most of them you have to constantly put your master password in when you want to use the autofill function, which I understand their security aspect of it, but particularly older folk find that a real intrusive, if you like, requirement for using them, and are reluctant to do so.
Charlie?
So, said it. I think that's the password manager is the key. They're flummoxed if they have to remember a password. So to make it easier on ourselves, they use the same password all the time and an easy one that they can remember. So the password manager is it. And most modern password managers, or a lot of them on smart devices, mobile devices, everything, can use biometrics to authenticate. If you're worried about that master password, you can use your biometrics to authenticate, whether it be a camera or a fingerprint or whatever. If you can just get them to understand, understand what a password manager does for them, B, understand how generating random passwords is the way to go, a unique password for every website, bank account, everything they use. And then ultimately bring in two-factor authentication, whether it be something like Google ID, I forget what it's called, the Google thing that generates a one-time codes, and think something like that, especially for really important ones like bank accounts. You can get them to do that, but if we could just get them to understand, if you can get them to just understand how to use a password manager and how to use it and that it's okay to generate this random password and they don't have to remember it, that is so far 90% of the problem. That's all.
Thank you. Looks like we have a bunch of other hands raised. Chris?
Yeah, I think that to a great extent, just the overwhelming different technologies that are available, it just gets confusing, and they just dummy down to taking the simplest approach, which is generally speaking the least secure approach.
John?
Yes, I agree with some of the comments previously made, except I want to take exception to the password manager. I am probably a minority because I believe that puts all your eggs in one basket. And if the security of that password manager is broken, then you lose everything. My main comment is I believe that people that you're talking about would best be served by using biometric logins. the face and the fingerprint or fingerprint. And that's, to me, is following that concept of keep it simple. And that's, I think the trick there would be to be able to teach people how to do it. But once it's done, it's a very simple and it's repeatable. It's the same process that you can use, maybe 2 different processes for different, if it's some have to use a face and some use the fingerprint. But that's my suggestion. Thank you.
Can I interject with a quick question, kind of based off what other people have said? With password managers or any other password technologies like the biometrics, do you think it's in resources that go into like the specifics of each brand of password managers is necessary, or is there a way you can kind of overview the general sense of how you use one and how you set one up would be helpful? Or does it get too complicated thinking about all the different versions that are out there?
Yes, to your question. People think they're complicated. I have received many comments that they wish that there was some standardization. Click here, do this, and you could go from one app to another app, and they were very similar. So you didn't have to learn something new in order to do it. And again, that's fear of change. The changes are confusing to them. And the bottom line is just make it more simple.
Thank you.
And this kind of gets into our another question too. How do you think most older adults keep track of their passwords? Do you think it's mostly in a notebook or other means? I'm not sure who raised their hand first. I'll let, let's see, Mike?
Yeah, notebooks are the most common one that I've found when I've gone to help people. But that's okay, except that they get confused in their notebooks. Trying to keep track of, particularly if they're required to change a password, which some organisations and sites do. You know, having versions of passwords, they still tend to use insecure passwords. So the fact that not using a password manager isn't always the issue. Even the old technology doesn't work quite often. But could I say on the biometrics, well, to say the least, I was alarmed the other day at news reports that MasterCard are going to use biometrics instead of PINs. Personally, I have what I regard as a reasonably high-end Android phone on which I have enabled Face ID, and it would work maybe 60% of the time if I'm lucky. I would say more like 30% of the time. I have to put the PIN in anyway. And my wife uses a fingerprint on hers, which is an even higher end Android device, and almost invariably it does not work. I've reset my Face ID, I don't know how many times now in the last 6 months, and it seems to improve a little bit for a couple of days, and then it's back to its old tricks, requiring me to put the PIN in. So I'm reluctant to tell people you should go and use biometrics, because if it doesn't work for them, they're just simply going to ignore it.
Sig, I saw you nodding your head too.
Thank you. I agree with what was just said about biometrics. I use a fingerprint on my phone. If I've washed dishes, it won't work at all. Otherwise, it has a hit rate of maybe 50%. I can reset it. It works better for a few days and then it gets off again. But I would enjoy a presentation by this group on biometrics because I don't really know how to use them as passwords. I've never encountered that. About getting people to use password managers, the only successful and how people keep track of their passwords. My wife generally keeps track of passwords on random pieces of paper that she then loses. The only way I was able to improve this was to set her up with KeePass and show her how to use it. And she's now begun putting some of her passwords in KeePass. There's another elderly couple who turns to me for computer advice. And they asked me to help them with a password manager after I had talked about it at lunch one time, and they realized that they really could use it. And I went over there and did the whole installation for them and showed them how it worked. And that got them started, and now they use it. I really think what works best is the users helping users kind of thing, where people who are familiar with them actually sit down with and help other people get going with this. And once they get going, there's maybe a better than 50-50 chance that they'll keep doing it. Thanks.
And Jennifer, that's the motto of user groups, users helping users, APCUG, it's us helping member groups. And when I give presentations on anything, I say, this is what you belong to this group for. Ask. You've got all these people, but we'd be more than happy to show you how, let you know. And then I'll suggest to the group, you need to have a presentation about fill in the blank. So you guys, that's on us to spread the word.
That's good to know. And I think in a little bit when we show you what we're working on, also let us know if this is something that you would use to teach others too and share with other people. But before we get there, we just have a few more questions. I want to get to some of the people that have had their hands raised for a while.
M, he's been sitting up there.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to say, I live in a retirement community. There's 18,000 of us in one community, believe it or not. And we are ground zero for cyber crime. I check crime statistics regularly. I'm a volunteer with the Sheriff's Department. And I look at, and where I live, it's mainly, I would say 80% of the crime is cyber crimes of one sort or another. The biggest problem, and I try to educate people when I can, I'm a retired IT guy, is education, number one, and this is which everybody else has been talking about, and that's exactly right, education and trust. And it's very hard, and bless their hearts, people are very trusting. I live in a community where very nice people, they'll say good morning to you when you pass by and all that. But unfortunately, when the gentleman calls up from Microsoft, and he's called my house and tells me that I have a virus on my computer and they need the password right away or my computer's going to get hacked and blah, 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 blah. After I had a brief discussion with this gentleman about his heritage, I could tell you very honestly, a lot of people are not, I was born and raised in New York, so I have a tendency to be very direct. Not everybody's like that. It's unfortunate because they're nice folks, but they fall for these crimes. And while I got the floor, just one other thing in reference to the password managers. Password managers, I have a love-hate with them as well because they could be very complicated and they could be very dangerous, as a couple of other gentlemen pointed. If you don't know what you're doing, if you don't know where they're storing the data, if you don't know if the data is encrypted, you are putting all your eggs in one basket. There are ways to get around that, but then it starts getting complicated. And like one gentleman said, his wife wrote it down on a piece of paper and she lost it. I've had that happen, but whatever works for you, but there are ways where you could use a password manager to point to another source. So it's a two-factor authentication. The password manager tells you to look here, this is where the password is, or it's encrypted. Maybe there's ways to do it. I don't want to take up all your time, but you can use it as a tool, but not put in your bank account, the important stuff. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to go on, but that's kind of what I had to say.
No, that's great. I have a question to that though. Are there certain password managers you trust over others, or just in general, trust any of them to put your passwords in there directly.
I will tell you, I look at them, and in general, I don't trust any of them. It's just my own take on it. I hate to sound so negative, but that's the way you have to be nowadays. So what I do is I just I read briefs on these different ones, and I look for user ideas, and I'm just careful. And like I say, I honestly have my own system, so I don't really I don't give away the store in the password manager because I just don't trust them. And again, that's my theme. When somebody calls me up that I don't know, I immediately don't trust that person. They have to earn my trust. And I try to explain that to people. When somebody's trying to help you, it's great. I love it. But find out who they are. Find out why, what's in it for them when they try to help you.
Yeah.
Many people in our APCUG world trust Bitwarden. Open source, they love it. They trust it. And a lot of people are moving to Proton. Overseas, I believe in Switzerland, they don't care who you are, where you are, what you've got, and they are changing to many of their apps that they have. They're pricey, but they have sales. They've got one going on right now.
That's interesting. So do you think people are like kind of becoming more aware of their online presence and these issues, and that's why they're switching to things like Proton Mail?
Yes, because they want to be safe.
Mm-hmm.
They don't want people knowing what they're doing, et cetera, et cetera. In my group, I've got 2 people that don't use password managers. They don't trust the cloud. Well, you can get them, and I think KeyPass is one of them, on your hard drive. And if you back up, March is that backup month, guys, and it gets backed up to your, external hard drive up to the cloud. So you always have it somewhere that if, you lose everything, it's up somewhere else for you to find.
Mm-hmm.
George. You're muted, George.
Don't blame the elderly user for not being able to manage the complexity of a password manager. This is something the industry should have solved years and years ago. Is the National Association working with bringing these manufacturers together to come up with a solution where the user is not responsible for implementing high-tech security on their devices?
Yeah,
That's my first question.
Yeah, not something we're doing, but we totally agree with you.
Yeah, you don't have you don't have the passengers designing the airplanes,
Mm-hmm.
right? I mean, and we're at that level of complexity. The other point I wanted to make was we as groups need to give less advice in terms of don't do this, and more one-on-one simulations with users of them actually sitting and getting hacked, for them to realize it will happen to them. Right now, most users say, oh, it won't happen to me. Even though their neighbor got hacked and they know their neighbor and they heard about it, right? But, so one of the things we're doing, we're demonstrating how you can use ChatGPT to how easy it is to use something like that, an LLM, to write a love letter that's a total scam, and put their name in the love letter and show them, look, this is how easy it is to scam you. They need to be more frightened, and the industry needs to come up with the solutions. Thanks.
Yeah.
Joel.
Yeah, several things. I use password manager all the time. My wife occasionally uses it. Part of the problem with password managers is that it has really good interfaces on desktops and laptops, but for iPads and iPhones, where you can only see one application at a time, sometimes it's a lot more difficult to use. But in terms of having all your eggs in one basket, yeah, use a good master password. Every time I change one of the entries in my password manager, I make a backup on my son's cloud storage. I make a copy on my memory stick that I carry with me. And every once in a while, I make a hard copy printed version, which I'm very careful to delete completely from my computer and put that hard copy in my bank box. So I'm kind of paranoid about losing it, but a lot of those passwords don't change very often, so even a no backup would be useful in that purpose. We have at least one or more classes, maybe a program on password managers every year. And one of the things we try to point out is what kind of information you want in there, because you want more than just password and login. You want your security questions in an encrypted form also, where you can get to them if you need them. If you have multi-factor analysis, you want to document what phones, what email accounts are used, because if you want to change that account or change your phone or lose it, you need to find out what you need to go in and change. And then the other thing that you really need to keep in mind is that a password manager database, if you document things properly, is probably the best way to pass that information on to your heirs or your estate manager. I had to manage my sister's estate when she died. She had her passwords in a notebook. Fortunately, I was able to talk to her several months before she passed away and get straight which were the entries that were current and which weren't. And there were some cases where even she doesn't know for sure. So it's a good way of passing things on to the next generation. It's also a good way just to keep that information for your own use if things change. One other thing, let's see, I knew there was something else I wanted to mention.
Come back again. Nope. I'm going to piggyback on what Joel said. I call it one-stop shopping. You buy a new refrigerator, document it in your password manager. How much it cost? You know, did you get an extended warranty? There's a notes section. So your digital asset executor knows everything about what's in the house, what you bought, and it makes it much more easier for them to close things out when you're no longer here. And you don't have folders of things I bought in 2024, things I bought in 2023. Put it in your password manager and make it one-stop shopping.
Okay, I remember one of the other things I needed to talk about, biometrics. That's one of the things that is going to be a problem if you don't have biometrics for your spouse as well as yourself, or somebody that's going to be your estate manager, perhaps. And the other thing that's a problem with multi-factor authentication, some sites only give you one email choice, one phone choice. What if you lose that phone? What if they insist on using the phone if you have a phone? They have to allow you multiple types of authentication, multiple email accounts, multiple phone numbers, so you have a backup if one of them gets lost, and also give you a choice of which one to use. That's still not going to help out some person that gets your password and log on any better, but it gives you the chance of getting back into that account if one of your methods of authentication breaks down. And that's important too. I think that's everything I have.
Thank you. John Kennedy.
I was just going to comment about the idea of, presenting topics to make sure that, Jennifer and the Alliance knows that we do provide lots of different workshops and presentations on some of these key ideas. Next month, Judy is working on filling up 2 workshops with backup, because it's Worldwide Backup Day, presentations, and I do the Linux one on the 3rd, and we're going to be trying to do a lot on the backup. So we do throughout the year bring out these different things or presentations, workshops on password managers and other things. So that's one thing that we do as an organization for our members, is to try to bring it to their attention of what's going on in the real world today. It's all thanks to Judy.
Mm-hmm. And Thomas, you're on, and then Gerald, and then let's go on to a different topic. Okay, Jennifer? Thomas, would you unmute yourself, please?
Yeah, and I unmuted myself.
Thank you.
I've got a little advice for NIST. This might not fit exactly into the topic, but one problem I've had is companies which require someone to use a password will, at kind of at their discretion, time out somebody's password. And you then try to log into their site and they tell you that you entered your password wrong, or your password and your ID don't match. So a person can spend hours and hours trying to find the right password. I keep great records on my passwords, and I've wasted hours on this. NIST ought to tell companies that they ought to write guidance that companies which run websites should put up a message that your password has been timed out, rather than you put in the wrong password. That way they'd know they should change the password. I've got one other bit of advice for NIST. They should tell grocery stores to stop using QR codes to get discounts. They put these QR codes all over the store. They want you to waste time logging in, well, taking a picture of the thing, then trying to log in. Usually logging in doesn't work right because they got a huge metal roof. And there's the real risk that people, scammers and other malicious people, will stick little stickers over some of the QR codes in the store to trick people into going to malicious sites. This ought to be advice to stores. It really irritates people, especially old ones, especially ones who don't have cell phones. And if they do have a cell phone, they can log in. They're liable to be that's liable to be one of the big new attack vectors.
Well, Gerald, you're on.
One thing that people find easier, including those who use Notebook, is to use passphrases. Passphrases can be quite long. You can put symbols in them, and they are easier to remember and use. Otherwise, for most of us who are elderly or having problems with sticky fingers, a very complicated 16 character symbol password gets difficult to use. But if you have a passphrase that's even 20 characters long with a couple symbols in the middle, it's a lot easier to use and remember, and you don't have the problem of sticky fingers putting in that very long list of characters and letters and symbols. Thank you.
I have a friend who is not that computer savvy, but she knows about nursery rhymes. She has a gazillion nursery rhyme titles, just as he suggested, passphrase. She puts a couple of random numbers in that she remembers, and off she goes. I was so impressed when I saw that. The only problem was that she had it saved on her hard drive under a file, and the name was passwords. Andy.
I had just a couple of thoughts. I'm agreeing and ditto, or not totally agreeing with some of the comments. Yes, I think there should be an easier solution. But as far as password managers, I've been using one again for years and years. I don't think that seniors are lazy. I think that the technology is a little bit overwhelming. Think about the old line, technology sufficiently advanced is indistinguishable from magic. People have no problem driving a car and using a telephone and not knowing anything about the technology. But then you get into a password manager, and it's like you're trying to invent a nuclear weapon. One of the things that I tell people when I'm trying to help them is that basically, computers, binary logic, zeros and ones, adults are too intelligent to use a computer. You have to think like a 2-year-old. They talk about their kids, their grandkids using computers fearlessly with no problem. I say, yeah, because you're an adult. you think you might break something, you're going to do something wrong. Way to promote it or to change the attitudes of some of the things that are going on. This is from firsthand experience. Identity theft, cybersecurity breach, whatever. I got a call from my bank that this a couple of years ago that my, questioning, did I have my ATM card? Had I loaned it to anyone? No. Yes, I have it. No, I haven't loaned it. Anyway, somebody got my ID, couple of ATM withdrawals, whatever. So when I called, I talked to him on the phone, and the guy on the phone said, well, you can take care of it. I'm not going to be charged. No. Well, you can take care of it on the phone. He said, well, I'd go into the bank and take care of it, which I did. Surprisingly, I found out that the banks don't generally report this to law enforcement, any kind of a cybersecurity breach. So with that being said, whether it's the banks or the retailers with, shrinkage or theft or cybersecurity incidents, maybe the businesses have to get a little bit more involved to help adopt measures to avoid this and promote it. That's all.
Thank you.
Sorry, could I break in on just a little bit? Kind of asking a question about some of the feedback we've heard. How do you think we can, because we can't change the industry, unfortunately, and I get frustrated by this stuff probably about as much as you do. For some reason, it seems like I have a nice, strong password for some accounts, then suddenly it doesn't work, and it's all confusing. How do you think we can break through frustrations like that and still try to keep people safe, even though it does get really frustrating and we can't really, we don't control the internet, unfortunately?
Bob?
Yeah, I was listening to everything, and everything said today is fascinating. The root of the problem is the bad guys. What we keep doing is we live in Fort Apache, and we keep building better doors, and the bad guys keep circling Fort Apache, and they keep, every time we build a door, they figure out a way to get in. What we need to do is put more pressure on the legislators, on Congress, on our whoever's in charge, to put more laws in place. Part of the problem, and I've been to FBI seminars, I've talked to FBI agents about this. The problem is a lot of it originates in other countries. Like, for instance, the Philippines. The Philippines, who's a friend of ours, quote unquote, but they don't go after cyber criminals that don't focus on the Philippines. So as long as the cyber criminal is focusing outwardly to the United States or someplace else, well, there's no real benefit for them to go after the cyber criminal. They might go on occasion, but they don't really. And it's the same with Russia. It's the same with Romania. It's the same with with India. I've actually tracked with my own meager little way. I've tracked some of these bad guys with some of the scams that they've tried to myself and some of our other residents. And I found a guy in Pakistan, rather in India. I actually could tell you his email address. I actually could tell you his name and what he does. He worked in an advertising company. The government can do that. So what I'm saying is they have the ability to do it. The problem is to get the other countries to pay attention. And if I were in charge, they would pay attention, because what you got to do is put pressure on these other companies to take serious. We can't make it beneficial for people. It's cheap to be a scammer. You set up a shop, it costs nothing. You could send out 1,000, 100,000 emails and put in some bogus garbage. And if 10 people reply, hey, great, I just made 100 grand today, thank you very much, and some poor senior citizens' life savings is out the window. So what we need to do is put more pressure. We need to make it less palatable for the bad guys. And again, maybe this is the wrong forum to talk about it, but somebody brought it up. So, and I feel very strongly about this, that's where we should put a lot of our instead of trying to block the door all the time, get the guy on the other side of the door to stop banging on our door.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Over to you, Jennifer.
Thanks. So I Completely agree. I think one of the things that we focus on in our campaigns, we know there's a lot of the burden is put on individuals, but we still want to teach them about the things they could do to protect themselves today. Multi-factor authentication or password managers, might not be perfect, but we still, are still kind of the top ways people can keep themselves safe. Does anyone have any thoughts on what motivates people to take action to adopt better habits online, like use multi-factor authentication, stronger passwords, watching out for scams? Like, is there a certain way we should be talking to people about this to convince them that this is something they should change about their habits?
One thing is if they know somebody who has been involved in a scam and they have lost $1 gazillion and things like that. And it's all about education. They need to learn how important this is to them regarding like backing up. I've had 2 hard drives fail. Most people never have a hard drive fail. They have to realize it can happen. They have to realize they can be scammed. Your friend, Joe Blow, wanted me to get in touch with you. He thought you might be able to help me. And then out comes the scam. And the Joe Blow's name, where did they find that? On your Facebook account. So it's all about education and your flyers that you have available for groups. The people who attended the Southwest Tech Conference for 23 years, in their welcome bag, it was stuffed with your flyers on security and all that good kind of stuff. We can do the same thing and hand them out to our group members in case they'd rather have a piece of paper in front of them. Mm-hmm. Joel, you're on.
Well, I monitor enough email accounts that if there's some spam out there on email, I'm probably going to see it. So one thing I try to do every month at the club meeting is say, here's what I've seen in the last month. Look out for it. One of the easiest ways to shut down some of this stuff would be if there was some more positive way to get identification of people on phone calls and on email. I think I saw several years ago that the phone companies are going to be required to verify caller ID. That definitely needs to be done sooner rather than later. And at the very least, say, this is an unverified, or just say, something that would clue you in that it's probably not who they say they are, or even suppress who they say they are unless it has been verified. For example, any phone call that's a solicitation that comes from outside the United States, gosh, there ought to be some way to stop that. And there ought to be some way on your email providers to say, this is coming from someplace outside of this country. And if you say, I don't want any or any foreign email, that ought to be possible to shut off. I get spamming phishing attempts in Chinese, Portuguese, Spanish, French, and occasionally German. There ought to be some way to say, if it's in a foreign language, it's obviously a fraud. Don't send it to me. We reject it, send it back to the sender. Somebody needs to do the same kind of policing that the spammers do. They obviously go out and find email sending sites that aren't properly secured that they can use for sending email. Because I get email that is sent from like Ukraine off of some domain that's in Japan. And you can tell that by looking at the IP addresses. And then you go out and look at that site that they're sending from, and they haven't set up the proper SPF security records to prevent arbitrary people from sending from their site with a false email address. So there needs to be some concerted effort to actually look for those things like the spammers and the fraudsters are obviously doing, and either get them to correct their configuration or somehow know that they need to be blocked. So there's some things that obviously would not be within our ability to do, but perhaps pressure on certain officials in the government might be able to get some action.
Again, I have a Gmail account. I have many of them. I never get spam in my inbox, ever. It goes directly to my spam folder. And I go in and I check and make sure that you guys send me emails, that you haven't changed your email address and it has ended up in my spam folder. You must, when you get a spam email in your folder, whatever you do, do not click on unsubscribe. They are going, hooray, I've got somebody on the fishing pole here I can reel in. You need to mark it as spam so your ISP knows you do not want any more of those messages sent to you. They are creating a bad guy list or a blacklist, whatever you want to call it. And it's on us to religiously do that every time we get an email from somebody we don't know who they are, we don't recognize the address. Don't muck with it. Mark it as spam. It'll go in your folder or they'll delete it immediately. Several years ago, the FCC tasked all of the major players, T-Mobile, Verizon, Spectrum, etc., on a June 30. And on July 1st, they got fined for every single message that came through to you that was spam. They gave the smaller ISPs grace period so they could get their act together and do it. I get calls. I have Spectrum. Spam is what they say. I know I don't have to answer the phone. I was talking about this at my meeting, and Verizon does something else. You all should have this. And if you don't, you need to reach out to your ISP and ask them if they get fined for letting these messages come through to you. Have they found a workaround? Yeah, but we need to preach, don't answer your phone unless you know who it is, or they leave a voicemail and then, oh, it's Joe. Okay, I didn't realize that. And then you can pick it up and answer it. It's all on education. I can't stress that enough. It's us educating our members on what to do. I have people say, oh, I answered the phone, and then I keep them on for hours, for a long time. And they think it's fun. No. Your number's just been sold. You're going to get more. Because
I just like to make one remark on that. I deliberately look at my spam just to see what's coming out there. And I also do find that, unfortunately, there are false positives. And if you are expecting email from someplace, you sometimes see it show up in spam.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So you do have to, you can't just totally ignore it. And my phone provider for the quote landline, which is really an internet phone, does stop after one ring if it's a spam phone call, but that still has interrupted me because the phone rings, I have to stop what I'm doing. Is it going to ring again? Okay, now I can relax.
See, mine's
so it's an interruption.
Yep. Chris Taylor, you're on.
To get back to your question, Jennifer, about what people, how they react to things and what's going to keep them from actually falling for scams, I find that it happening to a friend or a relative isn't enough. It has to be that it's happened to them personally, unfortunately, because most people think they're invincible. And so therefore they just think their relative is a fool for falling for these scams and things like that. So I think it really has to end up being personal, unfortunately. One thing that possibly can be used to combat that is some kind of mechanism where people can test themselves and see how they will fall for things. So you throw up, a scenario, and then you try to test them. Is this a scam or not a scam? And once they start seeing that they can actually fall for scams themselves, they'll react to that.
About they think you're a fool. Every group needs to show AARP's webinar that they put together a couple of years ago. Thank you, Chris. On you're not a fool, your friend isn't a fool, your relative isn't a fool. They have been hooked in by a criminal. They, not on them, it's the criminal's fault, because we don't need to make people feel badder than they already feel. So I recommend AARP Fraud Watch, Kathy, whatever her last name, she's the head of the Fraud Watch people, and it's imperative. That's an excellent video to show your group and lets their eyeballs open up. Really? Sig, you're on.
Thanks. That elderly couple that I helped with getting KeyPass, one of the reasons that they were interested in getting a password manager is that their email had gotten hacked, I think twice before they were finished with it all. And a bunch of other email spates happened. It was a year or two ago. We haven't had it so much recently, but when that happens, it really kind of confuses people and gets people upset and gets them interested in, taking better measures. I think one thing that your group might do to help would be to help people understand how to know whether their email has been actually hacked or whether somebody has simply gotten a hold of contact information and is pretending to be sending from their email, but they're really not, and it's easy to see that they're not. So how to make that distinction to know, oh, I really have been hacked. I've got to do, desperate measures versus somebody's just playing games. And then the other thing is, if your email has been hacked, just exactly what do you do about it? How do you go about fixing it? So that would be, I think, something a lot of elderly people could benefit from when they have the problem.
Do you think there's a good way to present that information? Like, would you look to like a video, like a how-to guide? Something we're thinking of creating is a workbook, which I don't think we'll have time to share on this call, but do you think there's a particular like resource that would be helpful here?
I think a how-to guide or actually the workbook sounds like a great idea. I mean, I would use something like that as long as they know they have it and how to use it. So, oops, I think my email's been hacked. I can go in here and see, okay, this is what I should do. Has it really been hacked? No, somebody's just, using my name and it's really them sending it, that kind of thing. So workbook, how-to, videos, maybe, but I think a lot of people aren't going to watch a video until they need to, and when they need to, they may not know how to find it because it's electronic and they don't know how to organize electronic information.
But you can show it at a group meeting to them and reinforce it. You guys all need to go to their website. They have so many, they have one right now on tax fraud. You could turn that into a presentation to give to your group in no time at all. You might want to use AI, give it some prompts, give a presentation to your group about tax fraud. Again, it is on us to get this knowledge out there to our members. We're the ones that are hearing all of this and learning about it. And if we just let it go, and don't do anything with it, that's crummy. Chris.
What is their website exactly again?
You'll get all that, Sig, okay?
Okay, thanks.
Chris, you're on.
I like that, Judy.
Can't hear you, kiddo. Need to turn your volume up.
Sorry, I was on the wrong microphone.
Oh.
Crummy. I like that, Judy. That good word. Good word.
It's a tech word.
It's a tech word. Okay. I also want to address Jennifer's question specifically about what makes people perk up and listen to the information they have. And I will second the couple of comments. It says when your friends or family get hacked. Well, obviously you can't arrange for their friends or family to get hacked or themselves, but it's relatable stories. I mean, I am one of those people, I think I do everything right. I think I'm invincible, but I perked up when a friend told me a story about an Apple ID scam that was going around. And I thought, oh, I just had to reset my Apple ID. I better go back and look at that and see if maybe, so just stories about real problems that people have fallen for. That's all.
Thank you. Thomas, you're on again.
Yeah, thank you. I think that seniors should be encouraged and taught to pay attention to security warnings that they get from their security software. an example is Trend Micro will warn me about a link mismatch between a link and a message that I click on and the actual link it goes to. And this is a grump about using tiny URLs because trusted outfits will use tiny URLs. And so they're teaching people to ignore security warnings from their software. I think that NIST ought to discourage use of tiny URLs. Nobody tries to type in 80-character URL. They just click on it. There's no need for tiny URLs. They're kind of like risky things like QR codes. Thank you.
Andy.
Just a quickie. Jennifer was asking how to get seniors in tune to this stuff. Most of the seniors, all the seniors that I know, including me, don't do all their own stuff, whether it's investments or taxes or maintenance or whatever. They have a trusted advisor. So maybe as part of the once a year sitting down with your tax preparer, your estate planner, whatever, they're reminded of, or they have questions for their estate planner as far as their digital estate, how to protect it, what's involved, things like that. And I heard about password managers. What is it? Why should I use it? What do you recommend? And now you're getting buy-in from somebody else. Rather than hearing it in a tech conference, they're having somebody that they're paying a couple $100 an hour to do work for them. They obviously trust that person. Just an idea.
I spoke about the tax document, so to speak, that you could turn into a PowerPoint presentation or whatever you use. And I sent a copy of it to my tax preparer and said, thought you might be interested in this, Rick. And I thought, why not? It's his home business. He needs to know what is out there that can get you. And he's not going to figure that out because he's not a computer person, not semi kind of like we are. He's a tax preparer who uses his computer for that. But he was most pleased to have received that. But then again, the word is we need to be proactive and take the time to do things like this. Kurt, your turn.
Gotta find the button. I would caution people to not paint security exposures with too wide of a brush. I happen to use Bitly for some things associated with both my users group and my church, and it serves a purpose there because we have cases where people actually do need to take in and type an ugly URL. And I'd much rather have them, having to put in 16 characters instead of 60, because 60 don't fly and 16 does. A comment about IP addresses. You can trace them back to a country. One of the first companies that I ever dealt with as a hosting provider for websites, an excellent company, and I still do business with them, is located in Australia. Okay, the IP, they're located in New Zealand. When I started doing business with them, their closest server was in Australia. So the IP address for some websites that I ran, okay, for US organizations were in Australia. Okay, think about what you are proposing, and that there are valid reasons for using QR codes. Now, people need to be a little bit careful, so we need to do a job of educating people. Okay, but if I put a URL code up on my up on a poster in my church, I think it's a pretty good bet that it's not going to get compromised. So be a little bit careful with how wide of a brush you take and paint things.
Thank you. Jennifer, we have time for one more topic to talk about.
Well, I'd love to be able to show you some of our workbook. I don't know if we have time just to get some quick reactions or.
Please do.
Efe, do you have that ready to pull up?
And you guys, if you have any more comments on what we've been talking about, the chat box is right there for you to put your question. I've been getting questions that I'll be sending you or comments, but fill up my chat box, please. And that we'll be able to give them more of our thoughts on the topics.
Efe, are you there?
1 second.
Okay.
You want to do the workbook or the landing page that we did?
Whichever you want to show. So while Efe's pulling that up, I'll explain that. We are putting together a few resources. So we've been drafting a landing page and that workbook we mentioned that would have both a online component and there'd be a printable version as well. And we're also exploring, we mentioned some videos, like how-to video walkthroughs of how to, complete certain cybersecurity best practices, like enable multi-factor authentication. We're trying to focus on a few key platforms as well that people might more often use, like email, for example. So Efe, I'll let you walk through and welcome people to put in comments in the chat as well.
I'm sorry, I love that.
Hi, everybody. So yeah, this is a little landing page that is still work in progress. We have this menu that is not going to be like this, but there will be different topics. The aim is that it's going to be relatable to how with something that is physical and tangible, right? So for example, here on this, we're explaining what multi-factor authentication is, and we have an image of what it used to be then, or how it's on the physical world. Multi-factor authentication could be when you set up 2 locks when you go on vacation, or when you leave your house, you lock your front and your back door as well with multiple locks. Now in the cell phone, you create multiple locks as well. And we explain here, we have different tabs on how this technology works. And we have just 2 or 3 questions. We make it really simple and easy to understand. So what does MFA do? And how do I use MFA? And it's very general, very broad, because we know that there are different applications and different softwares that do this. So it's just the context of the subject. And then we have frequent asked questions like, what else is MFA called? Other sites called MFA 2FA, like 2-factor authentications. And that's seen on platforms like Facebook, Instagram, Gmail. Who uses MFA? Banks, doctors, governments, your email address, and how do I pick your second key, your second password? And then you have a section of learning this topic. So maybe this is work in progress, but maybe we will have here some callouts of what things not to do, or what things to be aware, or what things you should be paying attention to. Like, don't share your second password, your multi-factor authentication with anyone else. And we go like that for every single topic that we think that you should be, even like simple things like, hey, I got an spam like this email, shall I reply to it? It's not like it used to be. Like, you have to, like back in the days when you will get a letter on your mailbox, you will have to rush, because the sooner you reply, the better, right? Now with email, You don't have to. You can replay in 1 or 2 days. Like you don't have to stress about replying quickly. So maybe also like for the junk mail, you know, yeah, like junk mail exists even in the physical world. You get like these promotions, or people trying to buy your house, or people trying to give you, like telling you that you want a trip or a cruise to somewhere. That's junk mail, but you recognize it because you see the letter on your mailbox and you know that's fake. We also teach you how you can see that you can get junk mail email on your email box, like a promotion from Amazon, a discount, a coupon code, whatever. That's junk email, but it's real. So it means that yeah, like real companies do send junk mail, but not all junk mail is bad, or it has a scam, you know. So we have different topics. We talk about here as well for the how syncing works. Sometimes in other focus groups, we found that people don't know that whatever you're doing on your phone also is syncing on your computer. Everything that you do in one place, when it's connected in the same email, it's also happening somewhere else. So if a scammer has your information, your bank information, and if you're seeing your phone or your desktop computer and you don't see there's nothing moving, yeah, if it's synced with the scammer is moving things around. So we need you to understand that syncing is also important. And you need to understand how syncing works, and what do you need for syncing to work, and what things can be synced. And for every topic, we have these we divided this in 3 different sections. What operating systems are. Sometimes if you're not really technical, you don't know what is the difference between Windows, iOS, Android, or Samsung, like even has their own operating system, or other ones, right? So what's the difference between Android and Apple iOS? What's the difference between PC and Mac? Can I use an iPhone that has iOS with a Windows PC? Yes, you can. So we teach you how to do this, and we have some frequently asked questions here as well, like even like some history, like why are they called operating systems? So we're trying to make things relatable to something tangible and something that exists in the real world. But we often know that technology is not tangible. You cannot touch it. You cannot touch a password, right? But yeah, this is the general idea that we have about this workbook that we're trying to make.
Okay, this is absolutely fantastic. I love the graphics. The problem is we have old eyes. Do the graphics with those wonderful old people need to be as large as they are? They're cute, but we need the words to be large. Some of us wear computer glasses, some of us don't, and are squinting our eyes, or you can see people getting closer to the screen in order to read things. So you need to run this through a small group of people that can let you know how easy it is for them to see everything that is like skip the guilt trip. Fantastic information, but you need to make it super simple and easy, not simple, but easy for us to read. And so often people give presentations to our groups and they don't think they have a screenshot of something or they're doing a live presentation and we can't read anything. And we're just kind of going, okay, fine, we're listening to it, but we're not seeing it. And 3 ways: hearing, seeing, and doing, which is your handbook, and everybody learns differently. So you have to focus on all three ways that people learn. And as I taught my computer classes, you have to say three things three different ways too, to try to make sure that everybody understands it. That's why it's important to have paper for people who love paper, things like this who are totally into this, but this is absolutely fantastic. And many of our groups have classes. They could use this in a class setting or a special interest group where they focus on one topic. They could have a short-term focus group like the Temecula group did, and just have maybe 2 or 3 meetings on just about scams instead of everybody all together in the meeting room. My 2 cents worth. Anybody else have any comments about the handbook? Come on, you guys, speak up. Lots of you teach the classes at your groups or out in the world.
Just one comment. I would be really careful about acronyms. I've come across that so many times where you just being a computer literate, I have a tendency, like I'll say something like an MFA, and it would be better rather than use the acronym, you actually just spell it out. And I do, like with the MFA, I saw you explain it, but then you mention MFAs 3 or 4 times. By then, the person has to keep up with that. So again, I'm not saying don't use acronyms, but just use them sparingly. Just a thought.
What you need to do is define them. You could have, I call in one of my backing up presentations, I call it buzzwords. Incremental, differential, what do they mean? Boom, 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 boom. So they get the lingo because they don't know the lingo. They don't know, like Bob said, they don't know what MFA, 2FA means, but parentheses, give them the name, and then it get ingrained and they'll go, oh, when they see it, it'll translate in their heads on, oh yeah, that's that silly multi-factor thing that takes me so long to do, okay? Diane Binder, you're on.
Yeah, well, I taught classes, adult classes in college, and I just wanted to confirm what you all said. Terminology is very, very important when you're dealing with seniors. And, you could have a section in your book to explain what that is. All the books I ever worked with had a terminology section. And then that page in your workbook would have a little notation or a cute little clip art say, oh, what does this mean? So just wanted to say that.
And they could tear that out or scan it and make a copy of it and have it sitting next to their keyboard.
Right.
Easy reference, cheat sheet.
Yeah, terminology is the big thing with, you go in a store and Best Buy and they say, what kind of OS do you have? And the senior standing there, what is an OS?
And they're going to take your workbook home if they do it in a class setting for a group. And it's going to be, I would visit some of my students and they would have the Peachy folder. They were that long ago. And they refer to all my handouts all the time. Invaluable to have something that they can see with their eyeballs and refer to. The older we get, the more clogged our brains get with all of our knowledge. And some of us need a little help.
Quizzes are fun too. So, and that just may be me, but all the students I've ever had always reacted to that. And that was a fun way to learn. And in all the sessions I ever do, I have quizzes or questions and I give prizes. And, that perks people up.
Mm-hmm. Jennifer, this has absolutely been outstanding. The highlight of my career here. Over 30 years with APCUG. If you would ever like to come back, just bring yourself and finish any of this, get in touch because I'd love to fill my calendar up with another one of these meetings.
That sounds great. Yeah, thank you so much for having us. And for all the great feedback and the time everybody took to join today. We really appreciate it. So we're excited to, continue with the workbook and the website and share it with you all when it's ready.
Please do. Please do.
And I will be sending out all the website links that I can find that pertain to you. I've been using it for your website for over 20 years. Because I was doing a conference and I needed to share information with people. If I hadn't been doing that, who knows? But our groups need to learn where to find really good stuff to share.
Mm-hmm. No, that's great. And feel free to share my email afterwards too. It's jennifer@staysafeonline.org. If anybody has any other thoughts or anything they'd like to share or any feedback on the website, please feel free to reach out.
Will do. And again, thank you to you and the rest of Lisa's staff. Say hi to Lisa for us and wish her very good luck in what she's doing right now.
Will do.
John?
Thank you. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank everybody from the National Cybersecurity Alliance, and thank you for asking us to be a part of this.